Hello, I'm Bo, and today I'm going to talk about modern VFX by examining the technology and techniques used by director Peter Jackson in the Hobbit trilogy, and why the desired effect was never achieved. Our story begins about a year ago, when a couple of buddies and I started meeting up on weekends to watch movies. Usually it was a mix of new releases and movies that we really enjoyed watching when we were all younger. We also really enjoyed watching series of movies such as Star Wars and the Marvel films. The latest series I had suggested we rewatch was the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogies. After having watched the films, I didn't feel as invested in the world of The Hobbit as I did with The Lord of the Rings. Something was off, and I didn't know what it was. Perhaps there were too many characters, making it difficult to connect to one, or too many subplots, resulting in a confusing story. But the one thing that I was sure of was the use of CGI in The Hobbit. Now let's go back a bit. When comparing the two trilogies, it is clear that the Lord of the Rings VFX are starting to look dated when compared to the Hobbit films. The advancements made by VFX studios, such as Weta Digital, are staggering and beautiful. Just look at the work that they've done on films like Avatar. And yet, despite these advancements in technology used in The Hobbit, the VFX creations in The Lord of the Rings look as though they belong in their environment, and are just all around more believable to the eye. Now, there are two different creatures that come to mind when I think of good and not so good use of visual effects: Gollum and the evil orc armies. Both appear in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. However, only Gollum seems to improve in the newer films, and not the orcs. This probably has to do with the way in which they were created. Let's take a look.
You don't have any friends. Nobody likes you.
The first time audiences really see Gollum was in The Two Towers. He was played by Andy Serkis, who was dressed in a faux body suit. He performed with actors on set and was later removed by VFX artists and replaced with the CGI Gollum. Originally, Gollum was meant to be a completely CGI character, shooting his scenes twice, with and without the actor. However, director Peter Jackson was so impressed by Serkis' movements that he was used on set.
Saved us. It was me. We survived because of me.
In addition, it was obvious that the other actors performed better with him on set. Fast forward to The Hobbit, and the technology has changed quite a bit. Serkis, however, is still on set dressed in a suit, acting with the other actors. Had he not been there, it's likely that the actors opposite Serkis, like Elijah Wood, Sean Astin, and Martin Freeman, wouldn't have delivered as convincing a performance. I believe in this instance the VFX and motion capture used to create the character Gollum in both of the trilogies was a smart move, as a practical version wouldn't have had the same effect. However, when it comes to comparing the orcs of the older trilogy to their newer counterparts, there's no competition. It also demonstrates that newer doesn't always mean better. Like many creature creations of the day, the orc armies depicted in The Lord of the Rings were done almost all practically. They were actors dressed in costume and makeup made to look like the evil monsters. Like the previous example, this was the right move, as the CGI technology wasn't as good as it is today, and it gave the other actors something to interact with. They didn't have to imagine that they were fighting monsters, because they were actually there, fighting them.
More! More! Where is she?
It was at this point, while watching the Battle of the Five Armies, that I was taken out of the story world. There were no actors dressed in costume or makeup. for the dwarves to interact with. The entire battle to me seemed a bit fake, as though there were no stakes because I knew that it wasn't real. I had no connection to any of the animated creatures and didn't really care what happened to them. Now, if you compare this battle to something from the older trilogy, like the Battle of Helm's Deep, the differences to me are night and day. One seems real and the other seems fake. And I think this comes down to the orc armies. The first example just seems so unrealistic. You can tell that the orcs are computer generated. Their movements seem a little off, their emotions are not there, and they don't really interact well with the characters. In the Battle of Helm's Deep, it is clear that the orcs are played by actors in costume and makeup. The all-around feel is just a lot more grounded. Their emotions seem genuine, their movements are realistic, and the interaction between characters just works a lot better. You can tell when somebody is hit, slashed, stabbed, killed, you name it.
Oh, come on, we can take him.
To summarize, the practically and computer-generated elements for the Lord of the Rings trilogy just have a more realistic look and feel, as though they actually inhabit the on-screen environments. While the Hobbit films look newer, the elements don't appear as realistic and are definitely noticeable.
That'll do it.
After having researched and viewed many behind-the-scenes videos of how these different films were made, I came to the realization: for any filmmaker, current or future, the fix-it-in-post mentality cannot be the answer. In a world where every other major blockbuster seems to be almost all CGI, the only way movies will be able to stand out is if they are believable. That may mean going back to a time when effects were done practically and then enhanced with CGI, achieving a healthy balance.